I see great things and the most pro-ready out of any quarterback in this draft. I think the biggest steal of the draft would be this guy going anywhere in the top 10.
You can't tell me there's not some of these teams, even with quarterbacks, that would not be elevated by having a passer like him in the building.
He is without a doubt my vote already right now on who I think would win Rookie of the Year and who would give Caleb Williams the biggest run for his money. I am so high and couldn't be higher on Michael Penix Jr. What's up, guys? Johnny Manziel at the Action Network Studios, joined by Kurt Benkert, and this is Franchise Mode, QB Edition. Today, we're breaking down the 2024 NFL Draft class of quarterbacks. Let's start with my favorite, second favorite quarterback in this draft class, Michael Penix Jr., the Washington Husky. My number two on the board, who I like the most out of this whole draft, I have him right behind Caleb Williams. And it may sound crazy, it may sound a little out of pocket. He's got the best arm talent in this entire draft of quarterbacks. I think he's the second best quarterback in this draft, and hands down, without a doubt, just based off watching, the Texas game. People are going to harp a lot on what happened in the national championship game. My opinion is they ran into a buzzsaw Michigan team that was destined for greatness. And if you look at that day and you really break down the national championship game for him, which a lot of people said he shrunk, this and that, he didn't make the throws. If you really just look at him and where his receivers were that day, they were off by just this much, a half a step on every single thing, which from having experience and playing a lot of football, those days happen. And if you go back and you really look at where he is the greatest, the University of Washington versus Texas football game in the first round of the college football playoff is as pro-ready of a tape as you could ever see from a guy going into the NFL. And you pair that with what he's done throughout this draft process, and we're sitting here, 3 weeks before the draft. I am so high and couldn't be higher on Michael Penix Jr.
Yeah, I love him. And I love him more after watching again and again and again. Each time I'm like, dang, if you were to change the jerseys of the people and put him in an NFL situation, you were watching NFL film, those are NFL throws. He was definitely throwing to some NFL receivers, but he was throwing balls that were like specific and accurate and with intention. He wasn't just tossing up bombs. He is the best downfield thrower in this draft, hands down. Intermediate, downfield, up and away, back shoulders, seeing balls that wrap behind linebackers' ears in front of the safety.
I mean, let's start there for a sec, though, too. Let's start at that back shoulder ball that him and one guy dialed in on. Like, you got a chance to probably see it with Rodgers a lot and how he makes it look so seamless. But from a quarterback sitting here as the guys who drop back, take 5 steps, and have to read over the top, DB coverage, high leverage, and the really only window in a fast-paced, quick timing decision to throw a back shoulder football, it's uncanny that he can do it the way that he did it at Washington, because the thing that I see about him is he's a very hard thrower of the football, right? He's got touch, he's got loft, he's able to do it, but his baseline best throw that he has is throwing the ball through a brick wall, in my opinion of what it is. And when you're able to take out the air and take out the slack of some of these throws, back shoulder, it gets on you as a receiver so quick. And just with his accuracy and the way he is with his feet, I see great things and the most pro-ready out of any quarterback in this draft. 49 games played. Last year throws for 4,900 yards, 36 touchdowns. The year before, 4,600 yards, 31 touchdowns. I mean, he's at 8.8 yards an attempt and 9.2 yards an attempt in the last 2 years. He's thrown it 555 times in both years at a 65% completion rate. It's really, really good. I mean, the guy has been a stud for his last 2 years at Washington.
I think the biggest thing with him is, in college, some teams and coaches scheme up things that are just wide open. His 4,900 yards that he has are a little bit different than 4,900 yards that you see other guys have. He's not just throwing to wide open receivers on post because the safety bid. He's not playing like Big 12 football. I know the Pac-12 or whatever, it's done, right? But watching the games, he was having to offset receivers on good sticky man coverage that he was more accurate than what they could do on defense. He didn't get the layups that some of these other guys get to rack up the stats. He had to earn all of it. And yeah, he had some things that he hit over the top because he's good receivers, but he had to be an accurate quarterback consistently over the entire course of the last 2 years to reach those numbers that he did. He didn't do it just by being in a scheme. And so you can't discount him for that. And you look at how he's built to sling the rock. He's got massive hands. He's got a really cool, like 3/4 release, a little prettier version of what Philip Rivers had, who was a decade plus starter in the league. I could see Michael Penix Jr. finding a way to be 10 to 15 years in this league because how he plays the game is what the league wants. And not to mention, he just ran a 4.440 at his combine or pro day or whatever, and he didn't even run the ball in college because he was so accurate. So if he's asked to run the ball, if he needs to extend the plays, he has the ability to do that. And I think it's kind of like you look at Justin Fields. When Justin Fields was coming out, he was not this great touted passer. He wasn't even like a great touted runner. He was a better runner in the NFL than he was in college because of how the way the game was played. I could see Penix Jr. being a good runner in this league on third downs, creating plays with his feet, because he didn't really have to do that in college, but he can do it.
Yeah, I think, we were talking about Fitz. This is a guy who has no issues playing in cold weather games after being in Washington. I think a New England, I think going back to a Minnesota, this is a guy that Kevin O'Connell and Josh McCown could get their hands on and really, really like do some damage with. My pick going into this, and this is really preemptive and really early, if he gets a chance to go into the right situation and he becomes a starter early on this year, he is without a doubt my vote already right now on who I think would win Rookie of the Year and who would give Caleb Williams the biggest run for his money as far as that award goes.
I like that, dude. I'm looking at some of these teams, and it obviously all the GMs, all the scouts, everybody that works for the organizations have watched all this film now. You can't tell me there's not some of these teams, even with quarterbacks, that would not be elevated by having a passer like him in the building. And maybe it's not a year one thing, maybe it's a year two thing. But I mean, I'm looking at teams like I'm looking at Vegas. I love Vegas for him. I love the Saints for him. I think he's an upgrade. I'm looking at Seattle. I think he could have really good success in Seattle. And then I'm looking at some of these other teams where maybe there's not a quarterback controversy yet, but they had some shaky ends to the season where Trevor Lawrence is going to be going into what year 4. If he played how he did last year, I don't think he's a long-term guy there. I'm looking at Miami. Tua had a great year last year on paper, but Tua's an injury away. Like there are some of these teams that maybe might not be in the market for a quarterback, but see what you and I are seeing in this guy and be like, dang, he's an upgrade today. And that doesn't even go to talk about the Giants, the Patriots. You have Minnesota, you have Denver, you have Vegas. I'm looking at all these teams on this list, and I'm like, dang, if they had a guy that could spin the rock like Penix Jr., he's an upgrade.
I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Are you better than the guy that we currently have sitting here taking our snaps at the quarterback? And it's always a very cutthroat business in the sense of if somebody else out there is better and we have the opportunity to go draft them, we would be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't go and take a guy. So it really comes down, I mean, you look at it right now, I mean, certain guys as far as Kuiper's got him at round 2. A mock draft, another one has him at 44. And then you have all of these other guys that we've spoken about in Kuiper's mock, 1, 3, 2, 11, 12. For me, I think the biggest steal of the draft would be this guy going anywhere in the top 10. I don't see the concerns as far as injury or age or anything like that the rest of the people do. As far as just dropping back, being fundamentally sound, then letting the football fly. There's a play against Texas, which right, it's like a skinny post right up against the goal line that he fits over the coverage, through the windows, and it's kind of bang, bang. And you sit there and you watch the Texas defensive players sitting there looking back like, what the fuck just happened? At that point in time, you're like, you can't do anything. And you're kind of like, what happened? You sit there and you raise your hands up and you're like, that guy just beat us because of who he is. I think he has that kind of ability. I think he has those kind of tangibles. I mean, I'm all in on him, all in. Couldn't be more all in.
That's money. I agree.
I know it's a lot to break down, but that's a wrap for Franchise Mode QB Edition on Michael Penix Jr. Thanks to Kurt as always. Please like and comment on this video, and make sure to subscribe to the Action Network YouTube channel, as well as my boy Kurt's YouTube channel as well, for all the in-depth X's and O's knowledge that you got here today. Appreciate you guys.